What's going on, guys? So this little video here is going to be sort of like a public service announcement, or just like what I did to fix my controller, the issue I was having. It's a very common issue with these ones, with the Xbox One controller, and yeah, I'll sort of just get straight into it. Now there's three main sort of issues that these controllers can have. The first one is a firmware issue. Basically you brick the controller. Don't know if there's any way to fix that. I'm assuming there is, but I've never had to run into that issue, so I've never had to really fix it. The second issue is where you drop it, but really I think it's just people throwing them at walls and the controller just dies straight away, or it starts playing up, some buttons don't work or whatever. And then the third one is it starts acting really weird just on its own. You haven't dropped it or anything and it just dies, and then you plug it back in and it doesn't come up and the light flashes and stuff and all sorts of weird stuff happens. The third one was what happened to mine. What actually happened with mine was it was just sitting there, I was watching YouTube, and then all of a sudden it started blinking, started pressing buttons and stuff on its own. I'm like, oh, maybe the controller's just shot, or the cable's just shot or something. I don't use batteries in this, I just plugged them in via a cable. Okay, so this sort of fault can happen to either the 3.5mm version 2 Xbox One controller or the launch model. I'm sure it's going to happen on the Xbox One S, where it doesn't have this plastic piece up the top, it's all one piece. The newer controllers that are Bluetooth and everything. I guarantee it's going to happen to them as well. It's just a component failure. It's not a really designed flaw. It's just a bad component. Basically, this was a capacitor issue. If you're not familiar with that, I'll just show you what failed and how you can sort of determine if your problem that you're having is the same as what I had. So to open these up, they're a bit tricky. I'll leave a guide in the description down below of how to open them up. This version with the headphone jack is a little bit different to this one, but they're similar. These side panels come off here. They're really clipped on tight. You have to take that battery cover off as well. They're clipped on really tight. Then you've got two T8 screws, 2 or 3. You've also got one in the battery compartment down here, just down in here. And I'll show you on my one that I already put apart. So here's the base of this one, the bottom plastic piece. As you can see, it clips in there. You've got your screws and everything, screw there, screw there. There's also a screw hidden underneath the label. Now, if you can just punch a hole through this using the T8 screwdriver. These are slotted security bits. They got the little hole in the middle of the Torx piece. So that's T8. I always prefer making things look the same as like new. So what you can do is you can warm this sticker up with just a hairdryer or something. Get it warm, not like melting. And then you can just pick at the edge of it and peel it up. When this glue is soft, it peels up really easy, so you don't have to punch a hole in it and it doesn't make it look manky. And then when you go to reseal it, you heat it back up again and the glue re-sticks. It sticks just like new. I've done it to a few. I've actually done it to this controller, as you can see. It doesn't look like it's been opened, but it has. I pulled this thing apart when I bought it because it was filthy. Once you get it open, there's two T6 screws. They're non-security bits, they're just Torx bits, and they're screwed in. I think there's one there and one there, so just anchoring these two bottom pieces down. As I mentioned before, the main fault when you drop it is because it's only anchored down here. You've got two connectors, one here and one here. What happens is this left one here, which controls this wireless module and a few other little things, and some of the buttons, the B button, that just pops up and then the controller won't boot properly. That wasn't really the fault with mine, but that's, if you have that issue, you've dropped it or thrown it or had a temper tantrum or whatever, then that's your problem. To get this board out can be a little bit tricky. You have to desolder, or just like you're gonna have to detach and reattach these wires. This is for the right trigger rumble. This other gray one is for the left trigger rumble. That's for the left rumble or right rumble. I've got it upside down, but they're for the rumble motors. I'm just going to quickly desolder these so we can have a look at the board. Okay, so I just desoldered the wires for the 4 rumble motors, so the 2 in the triggers and the 2 down here. These ones, they'll just come right out once you desolder them. These ones, don't have to touch them. They're actually taped down with some Kapton tape up here. Okay, so now we need to pull this board out. This is a version 1. I'm not going to show you the version 2, but it's very similar. So I'm going to pull the board out. And you got one in the middle, and then you got one on this left side, and it should pop out at the same time. Sometimes they don't. And then you can pull the board out. Now, the main problem with this controller was, because it wasn't turning on, the easiest way I found to tell, especially with capacitors if they're shorted, especially ceramic capacitors, is just to plug it in. So what I did with this one, I plugged it in. Because the issue is with the power board, it wasn't really with this one. This one had its own issue, I'll show you later. You can just have this board out, plug this into power. It's recommended not to plug it into anything you really care about, just in case it damages the USB port. Plug it into like a USB power bank, like one of these guys, or just into a wall charger for an old phone or something. Just something to supply power to this. As I said before, this wasn't powering on properly. It had flashy light and whatnot, and the fault was with one of the ceramic capacitors. And the easiest way to tell, and this is how I found out, was actually by accident, because I picked it up like this and I burnt my finger, because this capacitor here, this large one, it's labeled C30. This capacitor here, it was like red hot. It burnt my finger. And this basically, it's a smoothing capacitor, decoupling capacitor, whatever you want to call it. So it takes the 5 volts from the USB port down here, and one side is 5 volts, one side is ground. And what happens with ceramic capacitors when they fail, or sometimes, is they'll short out. So this is just essentially 5 volts to ground, and that's why it was getting hot. It was heating up. It was a dead short, and that's why the controller wasn't turning on. You can just remove this. You might have issues later on, as far as like maybe the controller, it might not have a good of a range or something, because there's a lot of noise coming. Like noise, when I say noise, I mean this capacitor is to clean the power coming from the USB port, or some of it anyway. And you might have issues with the controller not working very well on USB power or something. Like, I highly doubt that. There's a lot more smoothing in here than this capacitor, but you might have that issue. I just replaced it. I didn't know the value of it either. I'll eventually find it out and put it in the description for anyone that's actually interested. I just got another ceramic capacitor and put it in there. You don't really need to. I tested this without it. It worked fine. As with every YouTube video, your mileage may vary. It's usually just this. Another telltale sign of like this capacitor failing is you'll see it a lot. See where it is here, in conjunction to where the D-pad is, just here. You got a big metal plate there. What also happens, I've seen it a few times, is the controller will die, and then you'll have a little divot in the outer casing. It'll look like a little divot just here, like it's melted. That's straight up just from this capacitor getting so hot that it burns up and it melts. It melts this plastic around here, around this area. So yeah, I saw that the other day. Someone posted it online and they're like, oh no, my controller's died. And like, you can fix it if you want to. Don't have to spend another $60 on a new controller. I hope this helps someone. It's more of a ramble than a tutorial. I tried to throw in some tidbits of information that I found out along the way. But yeah, generally the easiest way to find a shorted capacitor is just to power it on and see what gets hot, basically. If something's getting really hot, then it's probably got a short or it's failed in some way. That's a bit unorthodox on how to do that. You know, there's other ways, more professional ways to do it, but it's just a controller. Come on guys, it's just a controller. It's broken already, you can't fuck it anymore, basically. So yeah, I hope this helps someone. Help me. I have only 2 Xbox One controllers, so it saved me from buying another one. And yeah, and this came with my Xbox. I bought it new. It's close to me, even though it's shit controller, and I use this one all the time anyway. Thanks again. See ya.